Welcome back to Shifting Schools Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Udick. Thank you for joining us today. And if this is your first time listening, welcome to Shifting Schools. Or maybe your first time listening over the summer. If that is the case, welcome back. You have caught us knee deep into our mini-series on the power of play that started the 1st of June and will be running all through the summer months here in North America to remind us not only the power of play in our own lives as we recharge our batteries, but the power of play in our classrooms as we mentally start preparing for the next school year. Today's episode promises to be an enlightening journey into the world of play. We have a fascinating discussion lined up with Dr. Julia Jones, the author of The Playful Classroom and The Playful Life. Dr. Julia Jones is an esteemed educator and researcher with a passion for the role of play in learning and life. With years of experience and 2 influential books, she brings a wealth of knowledge and enthusiasm to our discussion today. Now, before we dive in with our chat with Dr. Jones, I want to remind you about the fantastic resources available to you over at the Shifting Schools website. Of course, you can check out our free PDF guides that my co-host, Trisha Friedman, continues to create all summer long. And of course, our Summer of Shift courses that are available all summer long as well. Again, you can find all of that over at shiftingschools.com. Now, before we get into today's episode, here is a quick word from today's community sponsors. Discover the power of acknowledgement with Libra. In a world where every staff member's dedication shapes the future, recognizing their efforts becomes our mission. Libra transforms your school into a place where achievements, big and small, are celebrated daily, creating a ripple effect of motivation and pride. Join the recognition revolution with Libra, where every achievement is a cause for celebration. For more information and a free demo, contact me at jeff@shiftingschools.com today. Librarians, meet MacEnvision, the future of library management. With a student-centered design, MacEnvision's intuitive interface and seamless navigation ensures that your students find the information they need quickly and effortlessly. Discover how MacEnvision can transform your school at macen.com/MacEnvision. All right, get ready to be inspired and motivated to bring more play into your life and classroom with Dr. Julia Jones. All right, welcome back to the Shifting Schools podcast. I'm so excited today as we are right in the middle of our series on the power of play to have this conversation today with Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones is the author of 2 books, The Playful Life and The Playful Classroom, or co-author, I should say. I want to make sure I co-authored books too, so you got to always make sure you do the co-author. But Dr. Jones, thank you so much for being here on the podcast with us today to talk about the power of play.
Great.
I want to jump right in with our first question. What is one myth about play that you seek to correct through the work that you do?
No, thanks for having me, Jeff. I love this question. It often comes up when you're talking to teachers or about education in general. And I did just get back from our national play conference that was held at Indiana University. And this was also part of the buzz that was going on there. And it's the fact that play it's so much, right? It's play, playfulness, it's wellness, it's medical health, it's mental health, it's learning, it's curiosity, all the things. But the myth would be, and this is prevalent, the fact that so much has a misunderstanding of what play and playfulness actually is. So when you say play in schools, automatically educators, so many, and administrators, mostly administrators, I would say. I don't want to be biased, but also the brain shifts to this thought of recess. So play is not the same as learning in their brains, but that's so absolutely untrue. And it was a lot of the catalyst for co-author Jed and I wrote The Playful. It was originally a a tech for our teacher education
Yep.
courses because we work in the teacher education field. Play, you ready? Here's the myth. Play is not the of work. The opposite of play is depression. And that piece, especially now with the prevalence of rising rates of
Right.
or decline, I could say, in mental health for a variety of reasons. You can blame it on technology, on social media, whatever it is, or just the fact that we're being so much more honest with each other now in this world for our own health, for our learning, for growth. Play has to be a piece of it. So we have
I
to,
love that.
or
I love
more
that.
accurately
Can you dig
define
in
what
then? What
play
does that
actually
look like in
is.
the classroom? If depressing is the opposite of playfulness,
Oh,
what does that look like in the classroom? If I have a classroom that is a playful
yeah,
classroom
yeah.
where I'm not where I'm not thinking where I'm not
I
thinking
love this
about
question. I've written
work
a
is the
whole book
opposite of
about
play,
it.
or you're right. I think most teachers go to that idea of recess. Can you like draw a
Right.
picture for us on just what does a playful classroom look like? What are you looking for?
Sure. There's a lot of qualities. Let's go back and talk about maybe schooling when so you or me or so many of your listeners were growing up. There's this idea of an older paradigm of thinking. So math class was math class, and then if it was time for recess, then that was another. And if it was time
Yeah.
for, let's say, the guidance or the school counselor, we called it guidance back then. The school counselor comes in every 2 weeks, and we have this lesson on emotions and time management, those things. So that was a very compartmentalized way of looking at schooling. And so many schools still continue to function that way. Playful classrooms are going to focus on an integrated pair. So instead of cognition, so learning, being separate from movement, being separate from emotion, now those are all integrated. And so a lesson is going to make me curious as the learner. It's going to be engaging. Teachers, so much of this, and we do this as just people who love to teach. We
Yeah.
get to know our students. We know what, in the South, I would say, what cranks their tractor, right? What gets them going? What questions are they asking? And we dig into that. Teachers already know what the standards are. They don't have to say, on the second Tuesday in October, I'm going to hit this math standard. They can say, okay, apple
Yeah.
season in the South, let's go to the apple farm if this is early childhood, and then bring in all the standards that are associated with that. If you're in high school, I'm not a high school teacher, but so you can even do paper airplanes and talk about the trajectory of the path of the airplane and make predictions and look at the statistics of how accurate your predictions were. There's just so much. So if we can bring together cognition and movement and emotion, then we have a playful classroom. And that foundation piece is
Mm,
when we have
I
a
love that.
relationship with our
Yes.
students,
Yeah.
then they
And
know
I
safe
think
space.
I'm
Does that
glad you
help?
talked a little bit about
Maybe?
middle school, high school, because I think when we think about a playfulness classroom, I think many of us go to that's something for kindergarten, first and second grade. That is something where there's this thing that kids need to move a lot there and they don't need to move as much in middle school, high school. But I know. But there is this, right? There's this idea that, well, at some point you have to learn to sit in
Oh
a
gosh,
desk
it's so
for
different. It's just the
50-minute
opposite of that.
periods 5 times or 6 times a day. And that's what learning/work looks like. And so we have to train you for that.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times we also get caught in this paradigm that a playful classroom is something that happens in early elementary and is not something that we really think about as middle school, high school teachers. How do you help teachers get over that mental block or just shift that paradigm of what that means at those other grade levels?
This is where I feel like research has an opportunity to fill in the gap. I would I would
Yeah.
venture that a hypothesis is a human who is playful, like Jeff, if you are a playful human, then you're more inclined to bring that into your classroom and therefore have a playful classroom. So I think what we need to do to explore what is my play personality? How do I like to play? How am I playing? I taught a play cognition in the brain class this past
Mm,
semester, and we started every class with how have you played since the last time we met? And then challenging them to play in different ways so that they
mm,
were maybe figuring out that, oh, I actually like to go for walks, or I like to organize a birthday party, or I like to special pins for journaling, because all of those are different play personalities. And nobody plays
yeah.
the same way. I play,
Yeah.
like I mentioned, I go for a walk every day, usually about an hour in the woods. That gives me that restoration
Yeah.
that because sometimes I'll take a different path. But that might be very different from
Mm.
somebody who is a storyteller, who loves to write stories, or who likes to compose music, or you might be a joker. You might like to tell jokes.
No,
There's
I
play
love that.
personalities, and
That's so
sometimes we
great.
have 3 or 4 of them.
No,
So
I think it's good. I think
I
it's a
answered your
great
question. I got off on a
reflective
tangent
moment.
on what the
We're in the
question
middle of
was.
this Power of Play mini series all summer long. And our goal with this is to help educators just summer's a time to unwind and reflect. And I think that is a great reflection for educators who are listening on what are my play personalities and how do I make sure that when the going gets tough in the middle of the school year, I can
Yeah.
be reflective and maybe look at when I start to stress out or I'm starting to feel depressed or I'm starting to hit my wit's end, what are the things I love to do that are playful that might be able to help balance out those other
Mhm.
feelings and thoughts. And then from that, how do we support kids in our classrooms of finding their own playfulness?
Right. Yes, that's
Yes.
where I was going to go with this, is that we can't always assume that because this is my form of play that it is also yours. Like I would never I used 3 years ago,
Yeah.
if you said, "Julie, let's go run a marathon," I would say, "Oh, bad word. No way. No way. I'm still not going to run it." But now I will be so much more inclined to walk it. So knowing that, one, your play personality today may be different from your play personality tomorrow, but that the fact that we're all different and that the children you have in front of you need choices. I mean,
Yeah.
student choice is such a huge aspect of a playful classroom, giving them that power to decide how they learn,
Yeah.
which I will say is probably maybe the
Yeah.
hardest thing for our educators. We love to have everything just so, and we plan the day, and that ability to let go
Yeah.
and
So hard.
just take a
Yeah.
risk.
Yeah, and
One,
I
it's
think about
beautiful,
this. I've
but
talked
two, it's
about
so
this
hard.
on other
It's
podcasts
so
as
hard.
well, is all
So
the things I've been out of the classroom now. Oh my gosh, what's it been? 10 years? Going on 10 years I've been out of the classroom? 12 years? But I think back of all the things that I thought I was doing right, that it turns out I probably could have done that a little bit better. And it's that reflective mindset. And I think we all do that as educators. We do that as humans.
oh yeah. I mean, I've
Yeah.
trained
But
teachers
I
at the
think,
university
but
level, so I
just to
still
your
reflect,
point, one of
ooh, that could
my,
have
and
gone
still to this
differently.
day, one of my
Really think
playfulness,
about
one of the
that.
things I do to play is I have to go build stuff. Like I'm constantly building stuff out in the garage, or my wife gives me projects all the time. She even tells me, she says, you
Oh
can't
yeah.
retire. You need too many projects to work on. But I will go out and I'm like cutting wood and putting things together. And there are these times where when I feel the most stressed out, I need to get off the computer for a day and I need to go build something. And I like to figure things out. Part of my playfulness is being able and wanting to be in situations where I have to figure out how to do something. Right. And I think part of that comes from growing up on a farm, and there's just all kinds of background and history into that. But when I was a
Yes.
teacher, kids would come to me like we were doing if we were in the middle of a math lesson or we're in the middle of a lesson, kids would come to me and ask for help. My response most of the time was, why don't you try to figure it out first? Because that's what I thought was playful, right? Because for me, that was playful. But for that student in that moment, they
Mm,
might be looking at me like, well, you're
right.
not very helpful. Where
Right.
I thought I was being helpful and being encouraging to say, you can do this. You can do this. Try it on your own first.
Right.
Try to figure it out and mess it up. And you're going to screw 2 pieces of wood together that are wrong, or you're going to measure wrong. And it's okay. We'll just go back and fix it, because that's my playfulness. But not every kid's playfulness was that way. Thank you for tuning in to Shifting Schools. Let's pause our discussion to spotlight Libra HQ, a breakthrough in using AI to deepen connections within organizations. Imagine an environment where every staff member feels truly seen and valued. This is the heart of Libra's mission. Libra transforms how leaders celebrate and recognize the personal and professional milestones of their team members. It's not just about reminders. Libra's AI dives deeper, offering insight into enhanced team cohesion and promote a culture where support and acknowledgement are paramount. Picture a school where every individual is acknowledged, from work achievements to personal victories, creating a culture of appreciation in just minutes a day. In these challenging times, where the demands on educators have never been higher, Libra offers a way for school leaders to lead with true empathy and compassion, ensuring every team member feels an integral part of their community's success. Discover how Libra can revolutionize your school's culture. For a demo, contact me at jeff@shiftingschools.com. Let's build a future where every educator and staff member feels connected and valued. And now, let's get back to our conversation. To your point of understanding your students, to know what is the playfulness that they come from, as it's now summer and we're reflecting on our past, but also preparing for another school year, what are some strategies or some things that maybe teachers could do at the beginning of next school year to maybe support kids in learning their own playfulness skills? And then me as a teacher getting to know my students and being like, oh, that student loves to organize things. Organizing things for that student is a playful activity. Are there any routines or lessons or anything that you might recommend for teachers to maybe think about?
Right. Yeah. So in the Playful Classroom, which was a story published in the July of 2020. So imagine publishing a book on play when we're not even allowed each other. Right. Nobody in classrooms. And when we do go back, there's plastic shields up everywhere. But at the beginning of that book, there's a quiz. So for the teachers who like to give some sort of inventory, then that is a piece. That's a tool that you can see, hey, let's look at play personalities and figure out where you're at today. But for me, I love to start my classrooms with an escape room style challenge. So that, oh gosh, what is it called? I'm having a blank now. There's a company that does this and it'll come to me where you have, it's in a box and you have to figure out all the locks. And so you had the little clues around.
It's like Code Breaker.
We graduated our seniors on Saturday, so my brain's not working. But
I know what you're talking about.
It'll come. So I start that way on day one, because you can learn so much more about your students when they're put in those situations, who your leaders are, who your quiet, sit back and watch and observe and figure things out. Those kids are, who a little bit of your insecure wallflowers are. And so a teacher who is learning what's in front of her, like personality wise, I say her because that's me. I take notes and I figure out, how do I support these individuals? And it's not just one time, because on day one of school, everybody's nervous. But over time, you get to the point where you know them. So inventories, games, gosh, just being open enough to say, hey, I want to have a playful classroom, and finding those people who are also of like mind. That can be a challenge, because in a standards-driven world, and where we take standards-based assessments and they're high stakes, there's a lot that we in the Playful Classroom on how do I do this in a space where it's not valued. I have to give my students these assessments. How do I justify the way that I'm teaching so that it's and respected by my administration? And so we do give some of that language in the text. That the feedback has been really solid. And that was the Playful Classroom. That was 2020. And then when that went out into the world, so many people reached out to us individually and said, this is greatest for my classroom. What I really want to do is have a playful life myself. And that was the language that they used. So we said, oh, okay, let's talk about how we are playful. Let's identify people in our circle who are playful individuals. And we wrote The Playful Life that published in 2022, so 2 years later. And that talks about how you can invite more play into your world. So hopefully it can help an educator who is,
I love that. I looked it up real quick. The company's Breakout EDU. It was close. Breakout EDU. Yeah. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Yeah. All the time.
Yes, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I want to dig into that because it's very interesting. Like, almost every guest that we've had on, we start talking about kids, and it almost instantly comes back to us as adults as well. And so as we talk about that, because the research is very conclusive on this. It has huge benefits across all ages. What would you like to see more of when it comes to making play more accessible for us as adults? What does that mean for us? And again, we're in the middle of summer here. July is usually the month that teachers really get to unwind. What are some things that they should be thinking about or be maybe considering now here in the summertime, gearing up for another school year?
Okay. On our social media, I post, and also my co-author, Jed Derryberry, posts a play calendar. So if you're looking at inviting more play into your lives, we have just the month, and then every day there is an opportunity for play. It could be something as simple as skipping to the mailbox, writing a letter to a friend, or singing while you unload the dishwasher. So it's small things. We call them nooks and crannies.
I know nooks and crannies.
I don't know, Jeff, you don't sound like you're from South Carolina. God, Okay. So it doesn't have to be an event.
Sure.
Like for me to go on a walk in the forest, I need to plan for it. I need to put on the right gear, right? And I need to go. But that takes
Mm,
planning. But nooks and crannies, you could just, it's little tiny parts of your day where you can invite play into that space. As you're doing, if your listeners decide, oh, hey, I want to do that, I want to look at these play calendars. You don't have to do on the first day of
sure.
May or June or July. You don't have to do that one. There's 30 different ideas. You just pick a do what speaks to you. But then listen to your body as you do those things. So if you're doing it and you feel like, oh, this is not for me, I think that's very telling and where we hold our attention. If we're doing it and the endorphins and the dopamine hits and all the beautiful neurotransmitters going, then that speaks to, hey, this is maybe a form of play for me and this is going to be beneficial. um, One of the play personalities, it's one of
Yeah.
my favorites is explorer. And that could be, like I told you, there's 8 different ones. We can if you want to, but explorer can be either figurative or literal. So literally, when I go
Yeah.
into the forest and I take a turn that I've never, that's fun. That's like literal exploring. But also reading fiction is exploring a new world that is not something that you would have encountered in your, like for me, South Carolina, if I read about women in South Korea, that's exploring, right? And so now teachers in the summer who are wanting to restore, then maybe that's an option. And understanding the value of it, not, hey, I'm going to disconnect, but hey, I'm going to use this to really have some growth. And we talk about literature, books as mirrors and books as windows. Books as mirrors are the ones where you see
Mm.
yourself in the text. And so you feel validated and, oh, that person is like me. Maybe I can learn from their
Mm.
choices. Or books as windows
Oh, I love
is
that.
is a window into someone else's world. And that's through our
Yeah, absolutely.
empathy.
Such a great conversation. I'm here with Dr. Jones, co-author of the books, The Playful Life and The Playful Classroom. Mackin Educational Resources has once again partnered with us for our summer mini-series. Thank you to Mackin for continuing to be a partner of the Shifting Schools community. Their new product, Mackin Vision, is the future of library management. Created with your students' need at the forefront, Mackin Vision offers a user-friendly interface that simplifies navigation, making it easy for students to find what they need. This state-of-the-art system includes features like intuitive browsing, secure multi-level access, multimedia searching, and whole school rostering. Additionally, it has a teacher library portal, aggregated dashboard, live analytics, and centralized reporting. Mackin Vision is designed to streamline your school's library operations. Learn more about how Mackin Vision can benefit your school at mackin.com/MackinVision. Schedule your free demonstration and experience the future today. If you don't mind, can we explore these 8 different playful... I like this idea because I want to see where I am. Like, explore is definitely me. I love going camping. My wife and I love to go
Yeah.
backpacking. Like, we will do 13, 15-mile hikes because we live here in Seattle into the mountains. Only have half of it planned because trying to figure it out is the fun part, right?
Yes.
That exploring. So that's one type. What are the other 7?
So first, I need to give a shout out to my dear friend Stuart Brown, who wrote the seminal work on play. He actually developed these 8 play
Mm,
personalities. So it's not a creation of mine or Jed's, but we do love it, and we help to spread the word about Stuart's work. So director is one of the 8. A director is someone who
mhm,
does not need to be center stage, does not need to
mm,
be the spotlight, but the person who you find behind the scenes. So if you go to a party and you go into the
okay.
kitchen and you see who is cleaning up, who is doing,
Okay.
that person is the director, right? And that
No,
is a form of
that's
play
probably
for
more my
those
wife.
individuals.
Is that
Are you feeling that one, Jeff?
we say
No.
my wife is the gatherer of the family. Like, she's the one
Okay.
that plans things. She doesn't want to be front and center, but she makes sure everybody's going to get there. She knows
Okay.
where all the food's coming from, who's sleeping where. She likes to be the director,
Yeah.
and we call her the gatherer of people.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So that's her play personality. So explorer, director, joker is someone who's always trying to lighten the mood, always has some sort of riddle or some sort of joke in their pocket ready to go. I like to think that I'm a joker.
Yeah.
I think some of my jokes are becoming what in the internet would call dad jokes because I have teenage girls. Explorer, director, joker, competitor is personality. I do the Wordle every morning and I send the results out to like maybe
Okay.
14 different people. And I love to get their results back and I go, ooh, I beat that person, or ooh, and if I
Well,
twin with somebody, it's like, yay, we twin. But I get this
yeah.
little, hey, me, when I solve the Wordle in 3 or 4,
You've graduated
I had it a
your
couple days
students,
ago,
so
the
you're
big
probably
X
just
yesterday.
mentally just not
It's fine.
drains that. We all know that as educators.
Yeah. My brain's, yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So competitor, a
Mm-hmm.
kinesthete and is the next one. And so like you think the word kinesthetic, but kinesthete, anytime I Google it or I look it up in the dictionary, it is not a word. Jeff, it is not a word. So when I saw Stuart, who wrote this in his book, I asked him, Stuart, did you make this word up?
Yeah,
He
when
said,
you're a
oh,
researcher, you just make up
absolutely.
new words.
So I guess that's what you can do when you're almost 90. So a kinesthete is someone who needs to move to think. So if you're having trouble processing something, if you go out and rake leaves or you mow the lawn or you go for a walk, that would be a kinesthete. So in our classrooms, it would be those children who sit still in a desk for a long time, honoring that by giving them an opportunity for movement. Artist creator, I think, is probably one of the fan favorite play personalities, just because as I think so many of us are creators, we like to draw and paint and do and create engaging lessons. And it's any form. So don't think of it as just art like paint and colored pencils, but music, composition, you think of your tattoo artists, all of that, graffiti, all that's artist creator. So explorer, director, joker, competitor, kinesthete, creator, that's 6. Got 2 more. Storyteller is someone who, it could be someone who daydreams, somebody who tells tales. If you are ever in a restaurant with someone and you look around and you're like, which one of these people is a banker?
Yeah.
Which one of these people? Like, and you start to
people watching,
tell stories
just
about
try
the
to figure out
people
what
that
they
are
do, where
around you.
they're
I
coming
used to
from.
love to do this in airports, trying to figure out. Yes. And just making up stuff. Like that one's about to become a zombie. Get your stuff, get ready. That would be a storyteller. And then the last one is collector. So this is tricky. So you have to think about the meaning of it. Collecting items is one thing, like coins or stamps. But some people like to go hiking. You know those maps of all the state
like a
parks,
passport.
and you get
Some people have a
if you go on
passport to collect. Yes.
Trails or so if you yeah, exactly. So you have to think about your motivation for doing the thing. Are you doing it because you want to explore, or are you doing it because you want the stamp on your little book? So if you're doing it to get the stamp, then you are more of a collector.
And I think those two,
of experiences.
those two, I think would be me, because one of the things that really
And
frustrates
usually,
both my wife and I is we travel a lot. We've been to like 56 or 58 nations, but they don't stamp your passport anymore. And our first passports when we started traveling in the early 2000s were packed full of stamps. And we loved going back through and seeing the stamps because we got to collect them all. But hardly anybody stamps your passport anymore. They just send you in and send you out. And there was one time we were in, and I don't remember what country we were in, right? They weren't going to stamp my wife's passport, and she made them take her to a back room somewhere in the airport to get the stamp. It was like, I'm like, seriously, we have to go 45 minutes out of our way to get the stamp. She's like, I need a stamp that I was at this country.
I love it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So she's also a collector, probably, I would assume.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not, you don't have to just pick one. About 3 will manifest at one time, but they're also shifting. So like I told you, I wouldn't have been a kinesthete maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but definitely
and that's good to know too,
so
is that what you are today might not be what you are tomorrow.
Different types of play.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And something to keep in mind, that where your students start in August may not be where they are in January. So just keep reflecting on, am I giving them enough choice?
Thank you so much for those. That is really huge for me. I love being able to reflect on that. And me being the type of person, I don't know where this falls in my playfulness. Maybe this is storytelling, as I'm already going through my list of friends where I'm just like, oh, that friend's playfulness is this. That friend's playfulness is this. I see that in this friend, which I think is such great insight, even within our own families, to figure out how do you activate that playfulness to support others around you, much like a teacher would with students as well. Thank you for doing those. That's fantastic.
And to let them know, to say, hey, I noticed that you love to tell stories. That's one of the things I love.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I could just sit here all day and go back through all of those. That's great. Thank you so much for doing that. I've never heard of those before. Who's the researcher? Stuart Brown.
Oh, so Stuart Brown wrote this seminal work on play. He's a medical doctor who did some really cool research years and years ago. I want to say like early 80s, maybe. He started out studying serial killers and looking at traits across serial killers. And then he switched over to see Nobel laureates and creatives. And what he found, some of the most interesting work that I think for me, is that serial killers are missing, besides having domestic violence, abuse, that those awful parts of their childhood, they are all missing a play history. Or I can tell you, my grandfather was a plumber, and outside the plumbing store there was a fence, and inside that fence was a swing set, and I used to make up songs and swing, and like I can tell you about playing as I was growing up. That's a piece that's missing for that group of people. Whereas Nobels and creatives who have done all these great things have such a rich play history. When we think about providing playful opportunities for children and our students, it's just so important. It feels like a cliche, but Jeff, I can't stress it enough. All the research that this podcast, I think we have a responsibility as a nation, as a citizenship.
Dr. Jones, thank you so much. Again, the author of the book, The Playful Classroom, co-author, sorry, want to make sure you get Jed in there too. The co-author of The Playful Classroom and The Playful Life. We will link to all of those where you can download and buy those as well. As we get ready to wrap up our time together, a last question for you. What's one piece of advice you have for listeners looking to better embed play in their day-to-day lives? Yeah.
I told you about nooks and crannies. So I do think that's in your play personality, knowing what really feels good for your soul. I think if you are a human who just is maxed out and you don't know where to start, a beautiful place to start would be to follow me or to follow Jed or both of us on social media and check play calendars. We try to put it out there so that it's easy for people who just need a little bit of inspiration in how to play today. So that's Julie P. Jones,
we'll make sure,
author, and Jed.
Yeah, we'll make sure there are links to all of that in the show notes, so people can just click in the show notes and go and follow you right away. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I really appreciate it. Again, those books are The Playful Classroom and The Playful Life. There'll be links to those in the show notes as well for those listeners who have to run over and get a copy now, because it is summertime and it's a great time to go grab a new book and read, especially if you are a if you are what would that be? A collector of stories? What was the one you told me?
You can do this. You can do this.
Explore, maybe? Yeah, exploring the thoughts of others. I like that. Yeah.
It's a fan.
You can fit it in anywhere. So reading's reading, right? Reading's great. Great. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for a great episode. And thank you for joining us today on Shifting Schools.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It was great.